my highlights, I don't know, but I've learned an awful lot about the Dakar. When I came into this as a motorsport guy, I was looking at who was going to win. I was looking at the technical differences between Toyotas and the Peugeots, and the same on the bikes. And actually, I kind of realised that that's not what the Dakar's about. Yes, if you win, you are at the pinnacle of your discipline. You know, Sam Sunderland, incredible. He is one of the best riders in the world, there's no doubt about that. But there's so much more to the Dakar Rally about, than them coming here and winning. It's about the spirit of the event, the human endeavour, and going and doing something which is seemingly unachievable. And I figured that out last night. This is the absolute truth. I was walking around the bivouac and I bumped into the team of Joey Evans. It's midnight at the final bivouac of the 2017 Dakar Rally, and we're waiting for Joey Evans to return. Now, believe it or not, 3 days ago, Joey spent 22 hours on the bike out on the stage. Today, his bike got run over by a car and he's repaired it in the stage from another competitor's bike who had retired and is on his way back here. We're waiting for him, but there's so much more to Joey's story than that.
Joey Evans broke his back in a regional event 9 years ago, and he was a complete paraplegic, and he made ramps into his house and he was in a wheelchair, and he had some surgery to relieve the pressure off his spinal cord, and to learn all over again how to walk. And he got back on his motorbike again, and he said he's got this dream to come and do this Dakar Rally.
Every rider's got a story. Joey's just sticks out. You can't help to get personally attached to it, and because he's such a people person, such a friendly person, he just attracts everyone to him. And I think Joey's story just shows a whole different side to Dakar.
When you suffer a big injury, like a spinal cord injury, and it's devastating, you lose, when you have those kind of things, often, all your future dreams and all that sort of stuff goes. It's 2 in the morning, when I was lying in bed in hospital and I thought about my Dakar dream, because it was a dream before, and I thought, man, if I could still do that now, how awesome would it be? And so, to be here one day away, I've got 2 hours sleep to go, and then I'm going to be riding again, and just got to finish this thing off.
Once he crosses the line tomorrow, it will be the best day in his life.
I've seen this video probably 10, 15 times, and every time I get to it, so you're a master, thank you.
Alright, we're good, we're back on. Okay, so, I want to start off with asking you guys. Okay, I'm going to start without the mic. I'm going to do it without the mic until we get it right. Okay, so, I want to start off with a question. Can you hear me okay? Is it alright? Okay. I'm going to start off with a question. If you started, should I try again? 1, 2, okay. If you started riding a motorcycle before you were 10 years old, put up your hand. Okay, you put your hands down. If you started riding a motorcycle as a teenager, put a hand up. Alright, if you started riding in your 20s, hands up. Okay, 30s, 40s, 50s, nice. Anyone 60s and older? Get out of here, that's incredible, that is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take you back today, and I'm going to start off here, where I was faced with a decision. and I was 26 years old. I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle. I'd never owned a motorcycle. And at 26 years old, I'd saved up enough money to buy a second-hand motorcycle. And I had to make this decision. But I was nervous to buy a motorcycle. I had some friends who raced motocross in high school and things. I knew about motorcycles, but I'd never owned one. And I had this decision to make. Was I going to take this money, and was I going to buy a motorcycle? And basically, I was at this decision here. Do I just carry on my life as normal with no risk? Or do I try this adventure route and buy a motorcycle? And I bought my first second-hand motorcycle when I was 26. And I started learning to ride, and I did the normal, just stalling it the first time I pulled off, and I slowly just started getting better and better. And then I discovered off-road and enduro. And that's where I just really found my passion. You know, and I just love this. And then I started racing. And the first big race I did was the Roof of Africa back in 2006. And at the time, that was the gnarliest, most difficult, crazy thing I'd ever done in my life. And I suffered through a lot of different challenges, but I finished that race. And this ignited this drive to go race. And I learned a lot about this race called the Dakar Rally. And obviously you saw how that played out. And so I'm not going to cover anything about Dakar today. I told you guys that whole story in Greece, but it was just absolutely incredible. And obviously crossed the finish line of that Dakar in 2017. And I came home from Dakar, and it was a buzz. It was on TV in South Africa on the sports programs, and suddenly I'm like just thrown into this crazy world. And I had a publisher approach me, where they said they wanted to write a book on my story, and they would get a ghostwriter to write the book for me. I'd tell them the story, they'd write it. You know, I'm not a writer, anything like that. That's what they were going to do. And I thought about this, and I was like, okay, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. And I was lying in bed, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I thought about this. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to write this book. I'm going to do it myself. And so once again, I'm at a crossroad. I can get a ghostwriter, the book's going to be written really well, or I'm going to have an adventure. And I'm going to try something new. So I wrote the book. And the publisher read it, and they said, we're going to publish it. And it got published, and it went on in South Africa to be a bestseller. And then I started to get invited to companies, to go and speak at companies and tell my story at these company conventions, which was completely out of my comfort zone. I hate public speaking. I couldn't stand it. I was like, there's no ways. But then I started to learn, and I started to just enjoy it. And suddenly my life changed. Up until racing Dakar, I fixed swimming pools. I had a little swimming pool set up, a little company myself. It was myself and about 5 other guys. And we'd go around and we'd fix swimming pools and pumps and filters and that kind of stuff. And suddenly I'm on a stage and I'm speaking to like 1,000 corporate guys. It was just this crazy world that I'd been thrust into. But I was there because I chose adventure. And then the opportunity came up to race the Africa Eco Race, which is obviously the old Dakar route from Monaco all the way down to Dakar. And once again, do I go and do this race? Will it take away from what I've done at Dakar? If I don't finish there, it's going to be, it's going to be a challenge and stuff. And last year in France, I told you guys that whole story. And it was just an incredible race. We raced all the way through North Africa from Monaco all the way down to Dakar in Senegal. And it was a 13-day race. We raced over 6,000 kilometers. And for me on the second last day, I ended up hitting a camel on the second last liaison. And I ended up getting medevaced out in a chopper. And I spent a whole night in a hospital in Senegal, a government hospital. It was just crazy. And they released me from hospital at 5 a.m. and they drove me back to the pits. And during the night, my team had fixed my bike. And because I crashed on the liaison after finishing the racing, and it was a common section, strictly speaking, I was still in this race. And so I'd broken my wrist and I'd torn the rotator cuff in my shoulder, but I got back on that bike and I rode that last day across the beach in Dakar, and I finished the Africa Eco Race. And that was just amazing coming back from that race. And once again, crossing that finish line, I had my head all stitched up, as you can see every day out the way. And it was just this incredible thing. And I came back from this, And it took me a long time to heal up from those injuries. You know, I had plates and screws and all sorts of stuff. And I realized that I was at a point where I'm done racing. You know, and a lot of guys who have raced and stuff over the years, you'll know that suddenly one day, you've done the racing you want to do, and you realize that, like, I'm done racing. And I felt that I'd done the races I wanted to do. I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve in the racing world. I must mention that at most of these races, I come stone last. But I don't care, I'm finishing. So, at Dakar, what you might find interesting is that according to the leaderboard, I finished third last. But the two guys behind me had time penalties of nearly 36 hours. And so I spent the most time on that track over anyone else, and my finishing time was more than double that of Sam Sunderland. So I got my money's worth. But after that, I came back from the Africa Eco Race, and I find myself in this world doing these talks and that kind of stuff. And it was cool at first, but suddenly I'm like telling the same story again and again about racing Dakar. And I don't want to be that guy who just looks back on their life. Who, you know, you get that guy who keeps telling you how they played first team rugby in high school, and they've done nothing since high school, and the guy's 50 and he's still telling you those same stories from high school, and you're like, man, what are you doing? You're living in the past. And I felt that thing that I'm living in the past more and more. And I discovered adventure bikes after Dakar. I hadn't even ridden an adventure bike before Dakar, and suddenly I discovered this world of adventure bikes. And I decided, I want to travel, man. I want to travel around the world. I want to ride in every country. I want to do all of this. But I'm married, and I have 4 children, 4 daughters. And I've got to work. I've got to earn money. I'm in this world where I can't be one of these guys who just goes and travels and does the thing. So how do I do this? Because I've got this need for adventure. I don't want to keep going down that no-risk path. I've still got the need for adventure. I'm done racing, but I want to fulfill this need. And so what I decided to do is I'm going to do some trips. And I'm going to do trips just a few days at a time, and then I'm going to fly home, and then I'll go back to my bike, and I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to start riding. And I've been fortunate enough to ride in many countries as I've done talks in different places. You know, I've ridden with the guys in Jordan, I've ridden with the guys in Australia, I've ridden with the guys in Canada, in Kenya, in Egypt, you know, all over. And I started doing these little bite-sized trips. And then I was sitting there behind my computer, and it'd been a little while since I'd done a trip, and I had a talk to do in Cape Town, and I live in Joburg, and the talk was about 4 days away. And they booked my flights to fly down. It's about a 2-hour flight. It's all organized, and I'm sitting there behind my computer, and I'm looking at this computer, and I'm going like, I'm going to ride to Cape Town, and I'm going to plan a route, and I'm just going to head out. But I've got to be there in basically 4 days. And the route, to make it interesting, is going to be 2,500 kilometers of a lot of dirt roads and stuff. And I thought, screw it, I'm going. And it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I packed some stuff on the bike, and I got up early the next morning, and I headed out. And I just grabbed some GoPro footage. There's no music over it or anything like that. I just grabbed some snippets, and I wanted to show you this trip that I did through South Africa. Thanks, man. 5,000 kilometers, and I ended up at KTM in Cape Town, and I dropped off my bike there with the guys, and I went straight to the talk, and I did the talk, and I hopped on the plane, and I flew back home. And it was just this amazing trip where I got to think about adventure and all this sort of stuff. And it just started this thing going in me where I'm like, yeah, I want more, man. I want to go further. And so it was about a month and a bit later, I had another 6 days that I could spare. And so what I did is I flew back down to Cape Town, and I hopped back on that bike, and I decided I'm going to go start riding north. And this was the video I made that morning as I ride in Cape Town. Just picked up the 890. We're going to have an adventure. Going to get into Namibia in the next week. The plan is to be in Windhoek a week from now. We'll head back home, do some work, spend some family time, and earn some money for the next part of the trip. And then I'm going to head up from there. We'll just see how we go. You know, it's one of those where I don't know where the trip's going to take me. I don't know all the adventures that I have, or where we're going to go, or things we're going to do. But we're just kicking off, taking that first step. But let's see where it takes us. Something that was so cool at that point, when I watched this video back afterwards, I was like, I really had no clue. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to unfold over the next time. And it's exactly like you guys were when you pulled in here yesterday. You had no idea what was in store for you today. But you know, over the next few days, you're going to have an adventure. And that's all I knew. And so I started off solo, and I rode all the way up to South Africa against the coast along the Northern Cape, all the way up to the border of Namibia. And then a guy that I'd actually met, we'd only been friends for about 2 months, and I met him at a KTM event in Lesotho a little while earlier, and we just started chatting, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he was like, hey man, you shout, I'd love to come with you. And I was like, great. And so we met on the border of Namibia, and we did the next, I think it was 4 days up into Namibia, and we went to Windhoek. And Windhoek is the capital. It's about halfway up Namibia. And everything south of Windhoek, it's incredible, it's spectacular, but it's also relatively safe, all the way up to Windhoek. And that was our next point. So we got to Windhoek, and we crossed over the Tropic of Capricorn. That's in there. He's not a particularly good-looking guy, I apologize. But no, we got over to the Tropic of, we crossed the Tropic of Capricorn, we went up to Windhoek, and there was a KTM dealer in Windhoek, and we left our bikes at the KTM dealer there, and I flew home from Windhoek back to Joburg, went and did my next talk, carried on with that, lived my life there, earning some money and spending family time and things. And then it was about a month later, and I decided, all right, now we need to head north. But you have to understand, when you head north of Windhoek, it completely changes. Now you are truly in what you would really call wild Africa. Now, if you ever look at Namibia, that's where it is in Africa on the map on the left. Now, this is an app on the computer where you can drag a country and you can size it next to other countries. So this is the true size of Namibia. So you can see here, this is obviously all of Norway there. You can see I popped it next to Norway. You can see it in comparison to Europe. And so it gives you an idea of how big Namibia is. Now, Namibia is also the second most least densely populated country in the world. The only country that has less population per square kilometer is Mongolia. And most of the people in Namibia live in the capital, or they live on the river, right on the top right-hand side. So we're looking at going up the east, so along near the Skeleton Coast, all the way up. And so it took a lot more planning now. Now we have to be a lot careful, because in these areas, you have elephants, you have desert lions, you have all sorts of, you have hyenas, you have all sorts of stuff. You're really in a wild environment. So we planned this route out, and my buddy Rion, who I met at that event, he came back with me. We flew back to Windhoek, and we started this trip upwards. And we went to some incredible places. But we had one section in particular, and I only had 6 days. And what I had to do is I had to go right up the north in Namibia. I had to go through a pass called Van Zyls Pass, which is super remote, right in the north. I had to cross over this pass along a really difficult route, and then come back down to Windhoek, and then we were going to fly home. 6 days. Now, you're not supposed to do the pass in that direction. They actually don't really allow it, strictly speaking. But it was the only way I could do it in order to be back in time. So I was committed to that, and we headed up. But it meant we had a section of about 650 kilometers of proper off-road riding with no water, no fuel, nothing. All there is there's a couple of little tribes up there, but there's no towns, nothing you can get any supplies from or anything. So we stopped at the last, so that was my planning one, we stopped at the last place we could get fuel and stuff. And what I did is I popped on a couple of these giant loot bags, you know, full of fuel on the back. So I had about 15 liters in there, and then I took a 5-liter water bottle and I strapped it full of fuel to my rear foot peg. And so I've got this fuel, I've got about 20 liters of extra fuel, the tank's full up, my buddy's got 20 liters, we had about 10 liters of water on us each as well, and off we headed. And we went up further north, and we camped in some cool riverbeds and things like this. It was just an incredible trip. We cooked beans and canned meat on a fire in the evening with some noodles. It was just an incredibly wild trip. And we came across this.
Here's the up route there. Well, let's maybe just roll forward so you can see if this is a drop off. No, I guess it's the track. See, as we come in, he's going to feel the thrust in that. See, the track goes straight, it doesn't go down the river. And you go left, go. And then move on. Please move on. See, I've got a little gap here, but I can't go far, that's for sure. Yeah, I say we just got to go down. We want to try to do it together, right?
We carried on riding, it was amazing. We came across elephants probably about 5 or 6 times. We came across giraffes, like tons of giraffes. I had a whole herd of zebra run out in front of me. There was Kempsbrook, there was just Springbok. It was incredible being in these wild sort of places. And as we headed north, we started to hit some of these tribes, you know, and the people in the left hand there, you know, I've just got blank. What are they? The second? Himba. That's right. The Himba tribe, and the lady in the right in all the colors, she's the Herero tribe. And so you've got these 2 different tribes, and we come across these little settlements every now and again, and it was just incredible. You know, the kids obviously they love it. You take videos of them, and you're showing them the videos back, and they see themselves on the screens. It was incredible being in these places, and we kept going along. And then we had to get to that pass. And when we got to that pass, we realized we'd bitten off a little more we could chew with those bikes and how heavily loaded we were. And we started going up this pass, and I was working this bike. This bike was way overloaded with weight. It was really steep. I was really tired. It was late in the day. And I was just dragging this clutch. And I could tell I was doing it wrong. But I was tired, and I just kept going, and I kept doing this, and the clutch started slipping. And I was like, no. And I stopped, and I waited for it to cool down, but we're running out of time. We're trying to get through this pass. And so I just kept going. And it was at that point there that clutch was done. And it's Friday night, and I have a flight leaving from Windhoek on Sunday afternoon at about 4 p.m. It is the very last flight out of Windhoek. I have to be at a talk about an hour and a half's drive from Johannesburg on Monday morning at 8 a.m. and I'm speaking to about 250 business executives. And I'm stuck at the top of Namibia, up near Angola, on this pass, and it's Friday night. Now, I'm thinking,
what are we going to do? Now I'm carrying a satellite phone, I'm carrying a satellite tracker, I'm carrying survival stuff. I've done everything right. We've still got water on us, we've got fuel, but I got this bike and we're stuck in the pass. And the sun is going down, and this is still in the area where you can find lions. Now lions are nocturnal. And suddenly we're like, okay, we're in trouble here. And so we made some satellite calls. I phoned the KTM dealer in Namibia. He was trying to organize a small aeroplane to fly up there and drop off a clutch. But the problem is, the aeroplanes that were open cockpits where they could drop a clutch didn't have that range. And the ones that had the range were a closed cockpit that can't throw a clutch out. So suddenly we got this thing, and they were like, what do? We don't know what to do. We're phoning around, and then the sun's going down more and more. And we decided, okay, we've got to try to get back out of this pass. Now the pass is like these uphills, 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 uphills. And then you have this big downhill, and then it's uphills, 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 and we've broken down over here. And so we decided, let's turn this bike around, and let's try and get this bike at least back down to the dip, where we can leave the bike. And so we dragged this bike around, and with the engine off, I just had to try and roll this bike out of that first climb. So we got this bike down into this dip, and then what we did is we hiked up the next one where there was a little bit of a flat spot, and we set up our tents, and we're still phoning on the sat phone trying to see what we can do, and we're going backwards and forwards, and now it's getting late and it starts getting dark, and we have to get in our tents. And I'm on the sat phone in the tent, and the guy at KTM, he says, okay, I found a guy, all right, but he's an 11-hour drive away, but he can come with a pickup. He's got a 4x4 pickup, and he can drive into that area, but it's going to take him at least 11 hours to get to you, and the earliest he can leave is tomorrow morning. But he's got some challenges. He owns a camp there, and he's gonna hopefully leave first thing in the morning to get to you. And that's all we can do. He's going to have to drive us out, so it's going to take several days to get out once we've loaded and stuff. There's no ways I'm going to make this flight. But it's kind of like, we've got to get out of here now. And so we go, okay, well, let's see if he'll do it. And so we slept there that night, and the next morning we woke up just as the sun was rising, and we hiked back down, and then we pushed that 1190 all the way back up that hill. You know, so we got to the point here where we were camping, and I took a video just before we did that, where I showed you, it was just a quick 10-second video where it shows you where we wild camped. As you can see, it's just super remote, just middle of nowhere, nothing around, just this beautiful, beautiful area. And it's got to be one of the best places, the worst circumstances, but the best places I've ever camped in my life. Just incredible. And then what we did is then we rolled that bike down out of that area, you know, that morning. And we got to the bottom of the pass, and now we're running out of water. You know, we're on our last little bits of water. We're now hoping this guy is coming to us, but we can't get hold of him because as soon as he's left his campsite and he started that 11-hour drive, there's no signal, and he doesn't have a sat phone. So we're hoping he's on his way, but we don't know. And so we decided, okay, we've got to try to make a plan here. And so Rion, he went off, and he went to go try and find a Himba tribe, because we'd seen some Himba guys, you know, probably about 10 k's earlier. And so he rode off to see if he could go get us some water. And so he left me there, and so what I did is I laid the bike over, and I started stripping this clutch. And I thought, let me just see what I could do to see if I can fix this. And I took all the plates of the clutch out, and I got some sandpaper, and I sanded them, and I had these little hacksaw blades, and I tried to just roughen them up a bit so I could get into grip. And I packed this whole clutch back inside, and it took me well over an hour, and I'm trying to make a plan, and I know right now the KTM mechanics are cringing. They're like, what are you thinking? But I'm not that good with this stuff, so I'm doing the best I can. And so I pack all these clutch plates back inside,
and I start that bike, and I see if I can get it going. I'm still waiting for Rion to get back, and I get about 30 meters, and there's nothing. And I drag the bike under a tree, and I lie it down again, and I take my tent cover, and I put it into the tree, so I've got some shade there, and I start working on this clutch again, and I strip it all out again, and now it's nearly lunchtime, and it's getting hotter and hotter, and I strip all those clutch plates out, and I clean out all the burnt stuff, and I take a clutch plate, and I break it in half, and so I stack it all back in with this broken clutch plate. But now I want to get a little bit of a run at it. I don't want to try start off from stationary. I want to get up on a little bit of a kind of a slope to give me a little bit of a go, so I can just keep the clutch out and just go it. And there were these little Himba dudes there. They'd come walking over out of the middle of nowhere. You can push the bike up here, so you get a running start. And these little dudes here and ladies, always helping me out, carrying all the stuff up. They help me push the bike, so we get a bit of running start with this dodgy clutch. Champions. Make sure we hook them up properly. So they helped me push the bike up there. I made sure they got some good pocket money that week. And then what I did is I loaded up that whole bike, and Rian had got there then, and he had some more water that he bought from the other Himba tribe, and so we had some more water now and things. And I rolled that bike, and I just kicked it, and I just went. And I rode, and it was thick sand, but I was going, and it was holding, and I was like, are you kidding me? I can't believe this. And then it started going, and it started going, and it was thick sand with rocks in the sand, and so it was very difficult to keep any kind of speed, and it just went, and I was done. And I did about 3 kilometers. And by now it's super hot, and I just had to park the bike there, and I walked over to a tree, and myself and Rian, you can see my bike down over here in the back here. And we just had to park it there in the sun, and we lay under this tree, and I can just see, you know, how the heat kind of simmers off the ground, and I'm looking at my bike through this heat under this tree, trying to conserve our water and be smart, and we're hoping this guy's coming. And the sun starts going down, and we start thinking, okay, we're going to have to take another night here, and I've got to somehow try to get hold of this company on a weekend. Now it's Saturday night. I'm the equivalent of a drive of like 18 hours almost from Bintel. It's impossible now. There's no way. So we're hoping this guy's coming. And so we started unpacking our tents to set up for another night. And in the distance, in this dust cloud, you just see this guy in a pickup, a Toyota pickup. He's coming along through the sand over the rocks like this. And he comes up to us, and it's this guy. And his name was Vital. He was a Belgian guy, and he has a place, he has a campsite there in Namibia, and he's ridden a truck through North Africa. He's done all this sort of crazy stuff. And here's this short little old bullet. And he brought us some chicken and some chips, and he pulls out the food, and he's got a big cooler box full of beers and cokes. It was the most beautiful sight you've ever seen. And we sat there, and he was like, all right, well, we're probably going to have to set up, you know, tents tonight and stuff, and then tomorrow morning we'll head out. He's just driven 11 hours to get to us off-road. And so we said, okay, cool, but then we thought, you know what, this is as good a place as any. It's not quite dark yet. Let's maybe do an hour now, and then we'll set up, you know, and then we'll carry on. At least it's an hour less tomorrow. So we started driving. We loaded the bike on the back of the pickup. Rion started riding, and I'm sitting in the pickup with this guy, and we start chatting. And that's when I learned about how he'd ridden through, you know, North Africa in a truck, and I started to hear a bit about his story. And we just had this great chat, you know, chatting away. And an hour went, and another hour went, and another hour went. And we got to a really remote, like kind of rustic campsite there, where Rion decided he was going to stay there the night because he still wanted to continue with some stuff. And Vital says to me, he says, I can drive if you're happy. And I'm like, let's roll, man. And we drove 11 hours back out at night on these dirt tracks. And we couldn't see the tracks at night, so I had to navigate on a GPS. I'm holding my bike GPS, and I'm explaining to him where to go, and we're just rocking with this pickup truck through this Namibian bush veld. To the right of it, there's the track.
Shane out in Windhoek, and I explained to him, this guy's got to us, I'm on the sat phone with him, and I say, we're going to get back to where he is at about 7 a.m. But I've still got another 5 to 6 hours from where he is on tar down to Windhoek. And he says to me, he says, I will meet you there before 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And at about 3 o'clock in the morning, he left Windhoek and he drove 5 hours up to me there. And we had time to grab a quick breakfast at the guy's campsite. And we had this breakfast together. You can see Shane there, and that's Vital. And that was my bike on the back of his bucky. We offloaded on the back of his pickup. We offloaded the bike off his pickup. We put it onto Shane's pickup. We drove 5 hours down to Windhoek Airport. I ran to the airport. And I got on that plane and I flew back to Joburg. I had a few hours of sleep. I got in my car. I drove an hour and a half to the talk, and I delivered that talk on Monday morning. And so, then, about a month later, Shane had fixed my bike. I flew back to Windhoek. I rode back up through Namibia, right across the Caprivi Strip, through Botswana. I went to Big Falls in Zimbabwe with Rion, and then Rion headed off again, and then I rode solo all the way down through Zimbabwe back home. And now I want to take you back again to that decision that I had to make when I was 26 years old. Am I going to choose adventure? Or am I going to choose safety? Am I going to choose no risk? Am I going to choose normal? And I think back on that stuff, and I think, I want to choose adventure. I want to keep choosing adventure. I don't want to be a guy who lives on stuff I used to do. You heard Rion spoke earlier about KTM, 70 years now. We all know KTM is not worried about those championships. They're chasing the next championships. They're going more. It's all about the future. And so I want to leave you with this quote, that when you think about your own lives, I want you to think about this, and that is that the risk of adventure outweighs the risk of a life not lived. Go have an adventure.